Hello everyone, and welcome to this video on the Python programming language. So in this video I will create a Python program that can detect significant price drops on an asset. Now before we begin, if you like the videos on this channel, then be sure to click that subscribe and like button, and to be notified about new videos from this channel, hit that bell notification. Also, you can get the code or the data set or just support the channel on Patreon at patreon.com/computerscience, and I will leave a link for that in the description below. Also, the material in this video is purely educational and should not be taken as professional investment advice, so invest at your own discretion. So now with all that being said, I'm currently on Google's website. It's called colab.research.google.com, and I'm on it because it makes it really easy to start programming in Python. So if you're going to program along with me, all you have to do is go to this website, then log in using your Google account and get started writing your Python code. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is click File and then click New Notebook, where a new tab will open up for you, and then eventually a new cell will open up for you. Okay, now the first thing I'm going to do in this cell is I'm going to import the necessary libraries for the program. So I'm going to import pandas as PD, and then I'm going to import datetime from datetime. So I'm going to just type from datetime import datetime. Alright, and I'm going to run this cell by clicking this button here to the left, and this will run the cell and let me know if I made any mistakes. Alright, so it looks like I haven't made any mistakes. I'm going to go ahead and click that code button in the top left to create a new cell. And now in this cell, I'm going to create a function that I'm going to use later on to get the days between two dates. Okay, so I'm going to call this function get underscore date underscore diff, and it's going to take in a start date and it's going to take in a end date. Okay, all right, so now I want to make sure that that start date and that end date are date objects, so I'm going to convert them to date objects just in case. So I'm just going to set start underscore date equal to date time dot strp time. Okay, and then I'm going to input start underscore date, and then the format will be percentage capital Y dash percentage M dash percentage D. Okay, and then dot date. Alright, and I'm going to do the same thing for the end date. So I'm just going to highlight all of this, copy using Control C, come down here and paste it using Control V, and I'm going to just change this part here to be end underscore date, and change this part here to also be end underscore date, so that now these two dates, which match our parameters, are converted to date objects. Alright, so we've just reassured that. Okay, so next I'm going to create a variable called delta, which basically means change, and I'm going to take the end date and I'm going to subtract the start date from it. So that's end underscore date minus start underscore date, and then I'm going to return delta dot days. Okay, and that should do it. So let's go ahead and run this function, and everything seems okay. I'm going to create a new cell. All right, next in this cell, I'm going to create another function, but this function will detect the significant price drops. So I'm going to call this function detect underscore significant underscore price underscore drops, and it's going to take in some stock data. So I'm going to put stock underscore data here, and it's going to have some threshold. So for now, I'm going to set the threshold equal to 0.1 or 10%. Okay, and I'm actually going to put a note here. So here I'm going to put if threshold equals 0.1, this means it is 10%. All right. Okay, so next I want to calculate the percentage change in the stock price. So I'm going to create a variable called percentage underscore change, and I'm going to set it equal to stock underscore data, and I'm going to use the close price column, and I'm going to get the percentage change. So I'm going to type dot pct underscore change left parentheses right parentheses, and that should do it. Let's make sure. Okay, stock underscore data. And so the problem here is I put stock underscore date here, and it should be stock underscore data. So I'm going to put stock underscore data here, and now we saw that little squiggly line went away. All right, so that looks good. Next, I want to identify significant price drops. Okay, so I'm going to create a variable called significant underscore price underscore drops, and I'm going to set this equal to that percentage underscore change variable, and I only want the percentage underscore change that's less than the threshold. All right, but I want the drop to be 10%, so I'm going to put negative here, or a minus in front of that threshold. So now we have negative 10% for the threshold. Okay, and then last but not least, I'm going to return the data frame containing the significant price drops, or return the, I'm just going to return the data. All right, containing the significant price drops. All right, so I'm going to type here return significant underscore price underscore drops, and let's go ahead and run this. All right, so let's create a new cell, and now it's time to get the stock data. So I'm going to create a variable called stock underscore data. I'm going to set it equal to pd.read underscore csv, and we're going to get a file called stock underscore prices.csv, and I'm going to make index underscore call. I'm going to set that equal to the date. Okay, now if I run this, I should get an error. So let's go ahead and run this. All right, and we see that I get an error. And that's because I have not loaded this stock prices.csv file yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Come over here to the left, click on files, click on upload, and I'm going to choose stock prices.csv to upload. And then we get a little warning. I'm going to click OK. And let's rerun this field, or this cell. And now we see everything's okay and the error message is gone. So let's exit this here, and we now have our stock data. So let's show the stock data. And also this data is stock data for Amazon. All right, so let's go ahead and run this stock data for Amazon, and we can see that we have the open price, the high price, the low price, the close price, the adjusted close price, and the volume. And then we have our date here, and we have 3,225 rows, and of course those 6 columns that I just mentioned. And again, this is Amazon stock data, so that's what we get. All right, so let's go ahead and create a new cell. Now that we have all of this information, we have our functions, we have our data. So now let's go ahead and detect the significant price drops. So I'm going to create a variable called significant underscore price underscore drops. Basically the same thing I created in the function above. I'm going to use that same variable name. So I'm just going to come up here, highlight it, copy using Control C, come down, and let's paste it here using Control V. All right, I'm going to set this equal to that same function that we created earlier. So the function that we created earlier was detect underscore significant underscore price underscore drops. So I'm just going to come here, highlight it. Actually, I'm going to highlight all of this, and I'm going to copy using Control C, come down here, and I'm going to paste it using Control V. All right, so we have our stock data, right? So we called it stock data. So we're good there. We're going to bring that into our parameter here. And right now the threshold is 0.1, and we actually can get rid of this, but then we have a defaulted threshold, right, of 0.1. So I want to actually change this threshold for us. I want to put 0.01, so that is 1%. And let's go ahead and show, or actually we will print the significant price drops. All right, so I'm just going to print this here. So I'm going to highlight it, copy using Control C, come down here, type print, and paste it using Control V inside of that print statement or print function. And let's run this. Okay, so now we can see that we have 739 rows of data. So that's 739 days where the stock for Amazon price dropped more than 1%, or I should say 1% or more. And that looks good. So of course, if I change this, let's say I change this to 11 or 0.11, I mean, which is 11%. Let's go ahead and run this, and we can see that there are only 2 dates where the stock dropped below that price for this date range. All right. So anyways, I'm gonna make this 0.01 again. Let's go ahead and run this. All right, we get back all that data, 739 rows. Let's create a new cell. All right, so that's great. We've detected these price drops pretty easily. We can change the threshold. It's very nice. Now what I want to do is I want to get the number of days between each price drop. Okay, and I'm going to do this to get an average, so I know on average how many days before the stock drops below some threshold on average, right? So in order to do that, I need to get the number of days between each price drop and then take that average. All right, so again, I want to get the number of days between each price drop. I'm going to create a list called num underscore days underscore between underscore price underscore drop, and I'm going to set it equal to an empty list. Okay, and this list will control, or this list will contain all of the number of days between each date of that price drop. All right, so hopefully that made sense. If not, just hang in there and you'll see exactly what I mean. All right, so next I'm going to create another variable called price underscore drop underscore len, and this will contain the length of the significant price drops data set. So I'm going to get the length of significant underscore price underscore drops, and actually I'm going to put dot index here as well for good measure. So now we get the length of our significant price drops. Okay, so let's loop through the price drops. All right, so for I in range 0 to price underscore drop underscore length minus 1, I want to get the date difference. So I'm going to create a variable called date underscore diff, and now we're going to use that get date diff function that was created earlier. So get underscore date underscore diff, and remember it took in a start date and an end date. So the start date will be significant underscore price underscore drops dot index at position I. That's the start date. And the end date will be very similar. So I'm just going to highlight all this, copy using Control C, and then come here and paste it using Control V. But instead of I, we want the next date. So we're going to put +1 here, and that will give us the next date. All right. Next, I want to take that list that we have here. I'm going to come up here, highlight it, using Control C to copy it, and come down here and paste it using Control V. And I'm going to append to this list that date diff. All right, so now that all that is done, I am going to print the num days between price drop. So I'm just going to print that list. So let's go ahead and run this. Hopefully we don't get any errors, and we didn't, so that's great. So now we can see the list of days between each price drop. So let's just give this a little quick check. We see a 1 and a 1 and then a 7 here. So I expect 1 day between that between the first 2 dates, 1 day between the second and third dates, and then 7 days between the third and fourth dates, I believe. So let's see here. So we have 1 day between these two. Then we have 1 day between these two. And then we have 7 days between these two. Just like we wanted. So perfect. And let's go all the way down to the end, and we should see 5 and 1. So here we can see we have 5-day difference here, and then we can see that we have a 1-day difference here. All right, so this list seems good. Let's go ahead and create a new cell now that we have that information. All right, so now I want to get the average days of the significant drop. So on average, how many days before a significant drop given that threshold, right, for our data set. So I'm going to create a variable called average underscore days underscore drop. I'm going to set it equal to the sum of that list. So I'm just going to come up here, highlight it, copy using Control C, and come here and paste it using Control V. And I'm going to divide it by the length of that list. So I'm just going to paste that variable inside of our length function. Okay, and then I want to show the average. So, or I should say the average days drop. All right, so I'm just going to come up here, highlight it, Control C to copy it, Control V to paste it, and let's run this cell. And we can see about 6.31842.818. You get the picture. That's about how many days before we'll see a 1% drop in Amazon stock. Okay, so let's go ahead and, well, 1% or more, right? Let's go ahead and create a new cell. And now in this cell, I want to get the mean of the significant price drops. So on average, how often, or I'm sorry, on average, how far does it drop, right? So here I'm going to create a variable called average. Actually, I'm going to just put avg underscore price underscore drop. I'm going to set this equal to the significant underscore price underscore drops dot mean. Okay, and then I want to show the average price drop. So I'm just going to type avg underscore price underscore drop, and let's run this. All right, so that's good. We get negative 0.02428, so on and so forth. All right, so I'm going to create another cell. I'm going to kind of put this all together so that it's more readable and that we understand what's going on here. So let's create a few print statements. So I'm going to print here, you can expect an average drop of, and here we're going to put round average underscore price underscore drop times 100 to 2 decimal places. So I'm going to put the 2 here. So I'm rounding it just 2 decimal places. And then I'm going to put a percentage. So a drop of blank percent about every something days, right? So I'm going to use that round function again. And I'm going to put the average underscore days underscore drop, and we're going to round to the whole number. And then I'm going to put days given the threshold. So we can expect an average drop of blank percentage about every blank days given the threshold. Okay, I think that's good. And you know what? I'm going to create another print statement. So let's print something else. Here we're going to print, and let me see, make sure that I ended this properly. This needs to be a comma. Okay, so now that looks good. All right, so here I'm going to do another print statement. So I'm going to print this threshold was met. How many times? So it was met significant underscore price underscore drops times out of the length of our data set. Or yeah, the length of our data set. That's stock underscore data times. So this tells us how often did the price drop below our threshold, right? How many times did it drop out of our threshold given our time frame on the stock data? So I think that's good. And then one more print statement. I want to know the biggest drop. So the biggest drop was some percentage, right? So the biggest drop was significant underscore price underscore drops dot min, because it's going to be the minimum value, right? It's going to be the smallest value. In this case, that's our biggest drop. All right, so I think that's good. Let's go ahead and run this. All right, so now after everything that we've done, you can expect an average drop of negative 2.43% about every 6 days given the threshold. And of course, we could put the threshold here as well if we want to. This threshold was met 739 out of 3,225 times. So that means out of this data set here, that threshold or the price only dropped at or below 1% 739 times. And then of course the biggest drop was 14%. And I can put I can multiply that value by 100 here, and then of course add a percentage sign to make this a little better. So let's run that, and so now we get that percentage. And so that's basically it. So thanks for watching the video, and a special thanks to the Patreon supporters on patreon.com. Again, if you would like to become a supporter of this channel, I will leave a link to the Patreon page, which is patreon.com/computerscience, in the description below. Thank you all for watching, and I hope again that you all enjoyed it, and I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.